What's the most satisfying act of that you've ever experienced? Story 1. My old neighbor and I never really got along that well when we were kids. I was the first to get the original Xbox in our little three-house neighborhood, and he was the first to get the Xbox 360. One day he comes over and keeps telling me that my Xbox is a and that I should just break it, so my parents updated it for me. We argue, and it eventually comes to a point where he somehow gets a hold of my Xbox, then he drops it, and plastic goes everywhere. My mom heard the crash, and me, not wanting to get my neighbor into trouble, I idolized him for some reason, said I had knocked it off of the TV stand. He goes home, and I'm off because I'm out of an Xbox. A few months later, his family goes out of town on a cruise or something, and lets me take care of the house, letting dogs in and out, watering plants, etc. Realizing I had the place to myself, I go grab his shiny new 360 and paint over the little receiver window on the front of it. After testing and confirming it doesn't work, I put it exactly back the way it was and wait for them to return. About a week after they get back, I go over to hang out and play Xbox with him. He nearly breaks down crying, saying it won't work, and his parents overhear and offer to buy him a new one. They were pretty rich. He accepts, and I ask if I can buy the one he has, since I wanted to open it up and see what was inside. He ends up just giving me the console. 6 years later, things still work like a dream. Too long didn't read, friend Xbox, I his, and he ended up giving it to me. Story 2. I couldn't stand this one kid who I went to high school with, who lived a few blocks away in the neighborhood. One night he sent cops to my parents' house, where I was still living, telling them I had done something I didn't do. Luckily, I had a receipt in my pocket from the restaurant I was at, in a suburb 10 miles away that was time-stamped half an hour later than when he said the incident occurred. Regardless, my parents were woken up, etc., etc. I was off. Well, a few days later, my mom bought some plants that she left in the kitchen window. Our family cat was an to begin with, but all of a sudden, he was constantly jumping on the counters, eating these plants. When I'd try and him down, he would actually take a defensive stance and hiss and scratch. 10 minutes later, he would be back, chewing on the leaves. I asked my mom what the plants were, and she said, "Oh, they're catnip. They have a really pretty flower. I'm going to plant them in the backyard when the weather warms up." I was like, "Not a chance you're planting these in our backyard. Look what you're doing to the cat. He's an aggressive You'll bring every cat in the neighborhood, and they will all all night long." Suddenly, at that exact moment, a plot was born. The following night, I snuck into his backyard and planted the catnip everywhere. My friend who lived across the street from him told me it worked perfectly, and that he was always complaining about cat in his backyard after that. No physical confrontation, no property just stoned cats. Felt a little like some sort of supervillain sending out my cat minions to do my work. Story 3. It was actually against me, if that gives you any clue as to how justified and perfect it was. When I was 4 and my brother was 6, we were on our way to my great-grandfather's funeral. My parents stop at McDonald's, and out of my brother's small fry bag, the 4.5-inch tall white bag of fries, he pulls an 11-inch fry. Impossible, right? We're in the back seat. I see it. He yells to my parents to witness this awesome fry, but before they can turn around, I it and eat it. He is upset. Whatever. Cut to 12 years later, home after school, no parents, friends hanging out in the kitchen, everyone is scurrying around for an after-school snack. My brother and I are at the table, and our friends are in the other part of the kitchen. Out of this bag of wavy Lays, I pull a potato chip that is literally the size of my skull. No idea how this thing didn't break in transit. I'm like, oh my God. Guys, look at this chip. Before anyone can even turn their heads, my brother reaches across with his right hand and crushes the chip to crumbs. I have WTF eyes bearing down on him, and he simply says, "That's for the fry." 12 years had passed, and we had never spoken about it, but it took less than a second to remember everything and just nod in agreement that the score was settled. One enormous potato product for another. True story. Story 4. This is your but yeah. A few years back, my 15-year-old cousin was staying over at my place, which I shared with my boyfriend at the time. Her parents were on vacation in Cuba for a few weeks. While she was with us, we had to make all of her food. She couldn't cook and waited for me or my boyfriend to come home. Otherwise, she would only eat chips or popcorn. She wouldn't even make a sandwich. One day, she updated her Facebook status, which was a complaint about how bored she was. She had free reign to go out, and how weird I was. I guess she forgot I have her on Facebook. It really me off since I made all of her meals and tried my best to keep her company. That night, when I was making her a turkey sandwich, I took my I used the end slices of the bread loaf to build the sandwich and the bitter white part of a romaine lettuce leaf. I also put too much mayo on it. Oh, she ate that sandwich, and she had a look of annoyance on her face, but there was nothing she could do. Story 5. This one time when I was about 15 or 16, I was about to walk inside my building, had just placed the keys in the lock, when, reflected in the door, I saw 2 girls walking by behind me. I can actually hear one of them say, as she points at me, "Let's talk to this guy." But then her friend goes, "No, not him. He's let's go." The girl that actually wanted to talk to me was cute and everything, man. So not only did her friend block me, so to speak, but she also called me and that hurt. I walk upstairs, walk into my place, and then walk over to the balcony to see if I can spot the girls. They're right across the street, talking to each other, and the blocker is being a bit loud and obnoxious. That did it for me. I walk back into the kitchen, grab a slice of ham, and swoosh at the girl. Direct. She had a total F look on her face, which made me smile. Of course, in retrospect, that was a thing to do, and I wouldn't do it again. Too long didn't read. Ham her time. Story 6. This may seem small, but it was the most satisfying thing I have ever done. When I was in the 7th grade, I sat behind a who me and enjoyed being Every single dang day, he would lean back in his chair and in front of my desk over and over again. If I was trying to write something, he would do it even harder. So one day I decided enough was enough, and in the middle of a lesson, he started again. So I waited, and right as he was leaning his chair back fast, trying to my desk hard, I pulled it back. Without my desk behind him, his chair tipped right over, and he hit the ground hard. I can still clearly remember him whispering, "You bitch," beneath the laughter of the whole class, and the teacher at him to get up. The look on his face was a mixture of embarrassment and pure rage as he looked up at me from the floor. Never with me again. Story 7. My first real boyfriend, we kissed instead of just holding hands, kissed another girl and for her when I was a freshman in high school. She had actively pursued him, although she knew he had a girlfriend, so I blamed her rather than him. I know. Fast forward 4 years, I was a volleyball player throughout college. In the off-season, I played in a city women's league and a co-ed league as an outside hitter. My team played a new team with a familiar face. She didn't recognize me, different high schools, but I immediately recognized her. My team setter kept giving me amazing sets, and I kept slamming the ball over the net, just waiting for my shot. Finally, she was in the back row, and my setter set me up. I hit the ball, and the boyfriend's stepped into the hit. It bounced off her foot and went straight up into her face, and her nose. Story 8. This kid picked on me since 1st grade. Then one day in 4th grade, the teacher had her back turned, so he climbed under my table and started faces at me. Not sure why, he was kinda weird. It must have been a reaction, but his face was there and my foot was here, so I him in the face. Kid to the ground, shaking while his head. Teacher turns around and sees him out of his desk, gives him Later that day, his face had to the size of a volleyball, and he had stopped crying long enough to tell the teacher what had happened. My teacher asked me if it was true, and I said I felt something tugging on my shoe, so I kicked, thinking it was caught on something. The teacher gave me a lollipop, saying, "Be aware of my surroundings next time." The kid never me again. Best day ever. Story 9. At my school, we had a bag who liked to stand next to his locker talking to one of his friends, and when someone got too close to it, he'd it open into their face. As there were no cameras near this hallway, it was always dismissed as an accident. Anyways, one day he felt the need to open it into my best friend's face, gave him a nose, and almost it. Now, as I'm sure you all would be, I was off. So the day my friend got back, the bag felt the need to approach him to apologize about my friend. Luckily, my locker was located between my friend and the other kid. When I saw I could do it, I casually unlocked my locker, waited for him to get close to it, and slammed it into him. His nose and dented the locker. Revenge is sweet. Story 10. When I was 11 years old, I was by a 12-year-old boy. He would things from my lunch every day. I got of it and decided to do something about it. One day, I brought a super hot pepper in my lunch and pretended to be really excited about it. Sure enough, the boy comes over, catches it from my hand, and pops it in his mouth. He practically exploded and right around the floor, unable to handle the. I calmly looked at him and told him that drinking a nice glass of cold water would help immensely. He did so. This promptly magnified the 100 times. He never food for me again. I at nothing. Story 11. Driving to drop someone off, my radar detector went off. Saw a cop sitting in a parking lot, dropped off my friend, and headed back. The whole way, some guy is tailgating me. Speed limit's 40, I'm doing 45, and he's so close I can't see his headlights. We come up to a traffic circle, and he tries to pass me on the right. I sped up, and he kept trying. We hit about 80 or 90, with him on the shoulder. Come up to the crest of and I know the cop is right on the other side. I hit the brakes, and he flew up over the hill. Had to be doing 90 in a 40. I even stopped to let the cop out of the parking lot. Most satisfying thing ever. Story 12. Once in first grade, I took off my shoe because I had a rock in it. For no reason other than this kid was a huge hole, the class stopped and took off running. I chase after him, and he eventually throws my shoe down a hill into a field of tall grass and just looks at me with a huge eating in a butt stone-cold first-grade timber. I say, "Go find it," and shove him down the hill into the grass after it. He starts crying, and we run to the teacher. After explaining what happened, she made him go into the field and find my shoe. He crawled through the grass for about an hour before it finally turned up. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.